Hi Stampers, this is Lisa. Welcome. You should all have your hands on one of these catalogs. So if you don't, or if you're looking for a new demonstrator and you want your hands on this hot little catalog, definitely let me know and I will pop one in the mail to you. But today we are working with the Hydrangea Haven bundle. It has some coordinating dies that go with it. And then I'm working with my favorites, and they're going to retire tomorrow, my stitched nested labels. But then I also have some fun new ones. And we're making kind of a side easel card. So it folds flat, and then it's going to pop open this way. Normally it would go kind of this way. We've done that before, and usually the sentiment's this way. But we're kind of turning it on its side today. So if you've done this one with me before, this is going to be very similar. This is the card we're making. This is one of the cards that was in my monthly PDF tutorial. If you placed an order in March, you should have gotten the one that had 6 cards that this was one of. And this was done with the butterfly bundle. This was what we had in March. And today we're using the Hydrangea Haven. And this one I used an extra little die on. I don't know if I can peel this back and you can see, but I actually stamped our flower, and then I die cut this die to go over the top of it, and I will show you why, because it kind of pops up a little. It gets some like 3D effect I think is pretty cool. I started out with a standard card base, 8.5 by 5.5, and we scored at 4 1/4. But then I came in and I scored at 2 1/8, which is just halfway down the front of the panel. So the front is folded in half. And that's all there is to that one. And then I started making some layers to go over it. So I wanted a skinny little border. If you notice, this has got the 1/8 inch border going around. And so this one right here is 2 inches, because this was 2 1/8. So this would be 2 inches by 5 3/8. So I don't know if you can see down here, but there's, this is the half, and that's the quarter, and in between the quarter and the half is our 3/8. So 2 by 5 3/8. There's 2 of those, one for either side. And then I went down another 1/8 of an inch. So we're at 1 7/8 by 5 1/4. And that's what's going to layer on the front. And I actually cut 2 strips on the DSP, and then I kind of matched them up. This is where it was cut. And so basically the pattern will kind of line up. Even though it's going to be spaced apart, it lines up. Now with this one, it's not super important because the pattern is so random. I don't think you would really notice, but some of them you might. So just keep that in the back of your mind, that if it's going to be a pattern that would look better lined up, go ahead and line it up. Then I cut out of my stitched nested labels, I cut a Seaside Spray, again, last day for this, and a Whisper White. And I'm using those colors because that's what's in the paper. We have our Highland Heather, Gorgeous Grape, Seaside Spray, and then I used a Granny Apple Green as my green. So you can see that this was stamped in Memento black ink, and I could have colored it with any number of things, but because I was, running late, it is a Monday and we are going live, and that's me. I used the stamps that go with it. So I used the fill-in kind of watercolorish looking stamps and stamped right over the top of it. So in one stamp I got the leaves using this piece, and in one stamp I got the top using this piece. Now because it is a watercolor, they're not going to line up exactly. So don't panic if you can't turn it the right way to make it line up, because it kind of really doesn't. That's kind of the look they're going for there. And then, like I said, I die cut this piece because this die does these cute little things in that each little leaf or petal of the flowers will pop up. So if you sat here for a few minutes and you just kind of flicked up all the petals, it becomes very 3D. So if you like that kind of look, you might want to sit here and just spend a few seconds flipping all these things up, and then it will be raised. And then I put it on with a Stampin' Dimensional so that there would be a little bit of a gap, which allowed some light to come in from underneath. So if I had indeed popped up all of these petals and the light was able to come through, that would help even more. So there is that. We can decide if we're going to use that or not. And then I used the second from the smallest. So not the smallest, but one up from that of the stitch nested labels. It's going to be my stopper. And did you notice the inside of my card? Isn't that cool? This is one of the new dies that came out with the Color and Contour. The Color and Contour dies actually have these nice rectangles that are scalloped. And these, I love, they're stitched so sweetly dies, and it's got the nested rectangles, but these are a bigger scallop. So just something a little bit different. And I loved the way it looked as an inside layer. So I've got my Gorgeous Grape base, and then I have the Highland Heather as my next layer, 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And then I had my normal 4 by 5 1/4, and I was going to put it in there, and I thought, you know, let's do this. And so I was able to lay this die on top of that 4 by 5 1/4, which is pretty handy because I have a large paper cutter and I often chop up entire packs of our Whisper White, or now Basic White, and Very Vanilla cardstock so that I can use them as my layers. This is a size I use a lot because it's almost always the inside of my card, and sometimes there's one on the outside. So it's nice to have them already pre-cut. And when I came about using this die, when I went and cut it, there wasn't really much waste. There's that piece, and then here is our inside. So now we're ready to get started. And like I said, it's going to be real easy. And I'm going to use some liquid glue because, again, we're going to do that wiggle room kind of thing. So like I said, this is going to be the inside. And then because it's liquid, I've got my wiggle time. And I'm just popping that right inside. And then right over the top of that, I'm just going to do this. Now you could do some stamping on this if you'd like. For the purposes of today's card, I just kind of left it blank because I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it yet. And sometimes I do that. Sometimes I don't know if it's going to be a thank you card, a birthday card, a sympathy card, just a thinking of you. And this particular pattern and this design can be used for any of those things. So I don't know which one I'm going to do yet. And if I'm worried that, you know, I don't want to mess up stamping on here, I can always pop another little label up, or there's things we can do. But there is a tiny hello that comes in. Timeless Tropical has this hello that fits right in here. This isn't it. This is another stamp set. If you want to know what stamp set this hello is from, I'll find it. But there's a little tiny hello or other words in several of our stamp sets that would fit onto this thing. So if that's going to be your only sentiment, that works too. We're going to layer up the front of our card. Okay, for our focal point, like I said, I have these layering nested labels, and I'm sure once those retire, we could probably do this with, you know, the Stitch So Sweetly, the contour dies I just showed you, maybe the stitch rectangles. I'm just in love with this set. I don't know why, I just am. So I'm using that today. And then there's just going to be a tiny piece in here. And I've got another label for this piece, but it could be a small flower. It could be a heart. It could be, you know, anything small that you can pop up onto a Stampin' Dimensional just so it'll catch it and hold it open. But I'm going to go ahead. Let's go ahead and do some basic stuff in the background. They have these great stamps in here that can be used just as blotches, kind of just a pop of color. And so I did that on my other one. I took this just swoosh of color and I just stamped it on there. Did a little bit of whitewashing. And like I said, this is my color palette I'm working with today, as I have the Gorgeous Grape, Highland Heather, and Granny Apple Green. And I'm not putting very much glue on there. I'm getting it all over because I want it to go to all of the edges. but I'm not putting on a lot. It doesn't take much for this glue to stick. Then I'm going to get out my Stampin' Dimensionals. And like I said, I want this one to pop up on the inside. That's going to hold our card open. Okay, so that's our pop open. Okay, so I'm just going to want to adhere this on the front of the card. But again, I don't want to adhere the entire thing. I only want to adhere half of it. Thank you so much for sharing my video. I appreciate that. The way that we get ranked on Facebook and Instagram and all those things is if you like, comment, and share on any of our posts. Even on my blog, a lot of people will email me comments back, but it's very helpful if you actually go to the blog post and make a comment in the comment section on the bottom, because it's one of those things where Google wants to show people things that others have found interesting, and the way that Google knows you found it interesting is you went in and you liked and shared and commented on it. And so that really, really helps me. So I'm going to come in and just, oh, haven't gotten it going yet. I want the adhesive to be right up here at the tip. And then I want to break it off with a little bit of a snap so that it does stay up here. I want this roller to be sticky. And you want to watch down here. I'm always cleaning off this little section down here, because if there's adhesive that gets stuck down here, adhesive sticks to adhesive, right? And so sometimes it'll stick there. And some people have had like the tape runner thing, like, I don't know, start coming out this way. But I haven't had that happen, luckily. I sometimes don't break it off just right, and I have to advance it a little, make sure it's sticky up here. But because it is a stronger adhesive, it takes a little more of a snap to make it work. Oh, and look at that. I got all busy talking, and I put adhesive on the two sides. That's what I just told you not to do, right? So do you guys have one of these things? This is what we call an adhesive remover. It was something that was in our Stampin' Up! Catalog for years and years and years, and I guess a lot of our diehards already had one, so they weren't selling very well, and Stampin' Up! Pulled it, which was kind of a bummer. But I was talking about it to my team, and they wanted to order one, and I found them at the dollar store. For $1, I was able to go in and buy everybody one. So now they all have one. And I've had this one since the 90s. So once you get one, you're going to have it like for all your card making days, because they do last forever. But I feel like it's one of those things you have to have, you know? It's kind of like scissors. I'm always putting adhesive in the wrong spot. And I know I'm not the only one that does that, right? Okay, so we're only putting adhesive on one side. So now it's not sticking over here. So when I open it, this is all nice and clean, and it's going to be able to prop up. And then to adhere the flower to the front, and see how that little bit of color back there just adds a little something to the background. If that was all white, it would still be pretty, but it would be a little more boring not having that in there. And so to adhere the flower, I'm just going to put a Stampin' Dimensional behind each of the leaves, and then 3 on the head. And you can go ahead and do however many you feel comfortable with, but I felt that if I put them on all 3 leaves and the top, the stem kind of stood up on its own, and it's really so skinny that even half of a mini would kind of probably be seen. I feel like the ones behind the leaves and the flowers are hidden pretty well. Again, we can add that on there, or I can leave it off. I think I'm going to leave that one off so I can show you guys the 2 options that you have for completing that. So come back and see me next Monday, and in the meantime, I'll see you over in the realm. Thanks. Bye.